In this video, I'm going to be diving into the Vue CLI and talking about how plugins are created for the Vue CLI. It's going to be a little bit of a deeper topic, but if you've used Vue before and the Vue CLI, you'll be able to follow along and understand what's going on. Welcome back to Faraday Academy. If you are new here, my name is Gwen and I make programming tutorials and do programming live streams, mostly on JavaScript and Python related topics. If you're interested in this type of content, be sure to subscribe to my channel and leave a comment below letting me know what you think about this video and any feedback that you might have. I hope you enjoyed the video. The Vue CLI is a very helpful tool to be able to scaffold Vue.js projects quickly. If you have used this Vue CLI before, or even the Vue UI interface that it comes with, you have seen that it prompts you to install different packages when you are setting up your Vue.js application. These are called Vue CLI plugins. These plugins are responsible for the installation, configuration, and initial setup of pieces of your project, such as testing, linting, transpiling, etc. And these plugins will usually ask you some questions to help customize your initial setup automatically. Some of these plugins are core plugins like Vuetensils, Vuex, and Vue Router, and there are also many third-party plugins like Apollo, Vuetify, and Element that you aren't prompted for in the initial setup because they are third-party plugins that you can add to your application at any time. Vue CLI users have two options to be able to install and interact with plugins. They can either use the CLI directly from the terminal and use the Vue add or Vue invoke commands to install and run these plugins, or they can type in Vue UI and they will be able to open up the CLI in a user-friendly user interface in the browser and install and manage plugins from there. For the demos today, I'm going to be building a Vue CLI plugin for one of my favorite Vue libraries, Vuetensils, which is a Vue UI component library that I've made videos about previously on this channel. Let's look at an overview of how these plugins are made. First, they start off just like any other JavaScript project with npm init. This creates the package.json file. The only difference here is that the naming convention is very important when making a Vue CLI plugin. It has to start with this syntax, Vue-CLI-plugin, and then whatever the name of the plugin is that you're making. You can also optionally namespace the plugin. For example, if I had a namespace under my name, I could do @Gwen and then Vue CLI plugin, followed by the name of my plugin. If you don't follow this naming convention, then the Vue CLI will not be able to pick up and recognize your plugin once you upload it to npm and register it as a package. The next file you will want to create is an index.js file, which is the main file for the service plugin. At minimum, this file will need to export an empty function, but it can also be used to extend or update your Webpack config, or sometimes updating Vue CLI service commands. The next file you may want to create is prompts.js. Now this file is completely optional and is used for creating prompts for both the Vue CLI as well as the Vue UI interface in the browser. All of the configuration options that are available to the user on initial setup are found in this prompts.js file. You basically export an array of prompt objects where you can define all of the methods and attributes associated with each prompt. We'll see more about this in the demo later, but it's basically using another library called Inquirer.js under the hood for creating these prompts. You can optionally also make your prompts file into a folder called prompts and put your logic into an index.js file. Inside that folder, you can break things up as you would normally do in JavaScript. Next, we have the generator.js file, and this file is also optional. Now, like prompts, it can also be made into a folder called generator with an index.js file inside. Now, this file does a lot of the heavy lifting in a lot of Vue CLI plugins, because this is where you'll want to put the logic to create new files or folders if you're creating new templates or test files or config files. You also have access to a lot more Node.js functionality from within this file. For example, you can check and see if a package is installed. If it's not installed, you can just go ahead and install it. Another optional file is the UI.js file, which, just like prompts and generator, you can make this into a folder as well, a UI folder with an index.js file. And again, the Vue CLI will know to look for that file. Now, this file controls the UI integration, but not the initial prompts for setup. So if you initially install a Vue CLI package in the Vue UI, all of those initial questions still come from the prompts file. But when you go to the configuration tab, some of these plugins like Apollo and ESLint give you additional options that you can come in here and change even after you've started building your project and already installed your plugin. So that's a nice optional feature. You can also optionally include a logo.png file, which is the logo of your project, and that will also show up in the Vue UI. It's also recommended that you add a readme.md file. This shouldn't be new for you. Every project that you expect other people to use should have this file to explain how to use it. It's no different for Vue CLI plugins here. So now we're going to start actually working on this plugin, not just the demo stuff. So the first thing that we would want to do is install Vuetensils, since this is a Vue CLI plugin. So the place we do that is in the generator.js file. Now, the reason why we don't do it in the service plugin file, the index.js, is because we're not just updating Vue CLI service commands, like build and start and all of those commands. We're adding a new dependency to the package.json file, so we do that from the generator API. In the API docs, we can go to the generator API here, and it shows a list of everything we have access to, and the method that we want is extend package. Not a whole lot of information here, but basically it's used for extending the package.json of a file. So you can use this to extend custom plugin options or just dependencies and dev dependencies. So that's what we're going to do. Now, this function that we are exporting from the generator file has access to that global API object that will get passed in. So now we have access to the API, and we can use that method from the documentation extend package. And we can extend it with dependencies, and then add the dependency in here, which is called Vuetensils. And now I need the version number here. Although I could do latest or something like that, but I'd rather get the latest version number from the package. In the package docs, I can see that the latest version, as of the time of this recording, is 0.7.1, and I'm going to use that version here. Now, don't worry about this dependencies object overwriting all of your other dependencies. This object actually gets merged with whatever your other dependencies are. It will just add it on top of them. So let's try this out. I'm going to create a new test Vue.js project called test Vuetensils. Let me put a hyphen in here. I don't think I'll need anything too crazy. I'm just going to go with the default. Now I have a default Vue CLI project setup, which I can open in my code editor. All right, so now Look at my package.json and see that I only have these two dependencies, core.js and Vue. Now let me try adding my plugin to this repo and running it and see what happens. So since my plugin isn't available on npm, it won't be picked up by the Vue CLI, so I can't do something like Vue add. So I'm going to have to install this locally first. First, I'm going to get the path to my project, so I can just copy it. And now I'll install my plugin, which is in this same directory. So I'll do npm install save dev, and then let me just highlight that, which automatically copies it in the terminal. So I'll paste that, and the name of my plugin is Vue CLI plugin Vuetensils, and that will install my plugin from my local file, and it will be in my package.json, which I can see here now, which actually resolved to a relative path, but it's pointing to this file. So now every time I update my plugin and rerun it, I won't have to reinstall the plugin, and Vue CLI will just pick up on the new changes. So now I do have to run the plugin, and I can do that manually through Vue invoke and then the plugin name. So Vue CLI plugin Vuetensils. It's warning me that there are uncommitted changes, but I already know that because I installed that last package, and I'm not worried, so I'll say yes. So this is interesting. Now it's asking me another question here, show helpful error messages. This actually comes from our code. Now that we invoked this plugin, the Vuetensils plugin that we're working on, the first thing it does is run through these prompts. And since during the demo earlier, I added this prompt to the prompts.js file with the message show helpful error messages as a boolean or a type confirm. That's why it's now asking me in the terminal. The default was yes, that's why you can see the capital Y here and the lowercase n. So if I hit enter without saying anything, it's going to keep the default. But I can hit N if I want and then enter, and it will be a no. And now you can see it's invoking the generator for the Vue CLI plugin Vuetensils, where I'm telling it to install one additional dependency, which is the Vuetensils library itself. So now when I go back into this test Vuetensils Vue project, I can see that it did indeed install Vuetensils at the version I specified from my generator file. So that's definitely a good first step, especially with setting up a Vue UI component library, is installing the actual library. A few more things that you might notice from Vue CLI plugins that are for component libraries are Sass and theme setups in the prompts and generator, but Vuetensils really doesn't have any styling associated with the library. It's just about functionality and accessibility, but there are still plenty of things that you can do with this library. For example, we could prompt the user to see whether they wanted to globally register components or set them up in local files, and we could go ahead and set up that configuration for them. To do this, we need to create templates. So like I said before, we can turn this generator.js file into a folder, which I'm going to do. New folder, generator, and now I'll put an index.js file inside. Okay, and now all of this generator code from the generator.js is now going to go into the index.js file. And I'm actually going to delete this generator.js file now. Delete. Oh, it's giving me an error. I'm just going to suppress that. Okay, and now I can add a new folder inside of this called template. And inside of the templates folder, I'm going to add another folder called source. And then inside of the source folder, I will add a file called main.js. Now, if you know from creating Vue applications, there is a main.js file inside of a source folder in Vue. And I'm basically recreating that file structure so that when I tell the Vue CLI to render whatever file I create inside of templates, it knows to render it inside the source folder. And you'll see an example of this when I run this plugin again. Now, I'm not going to read in the particular user's main.js file. What I'm going to do right now is just basically copy paste an already generated main.js file and then update it. So I'm going to take the source/main.js file from the app I just generated or created, copy that, go back here and paste it in. And I'm just going to change one thing on the file so that we can see that it really updated. I'll put anything here, just like console.log, it says updated. Okay, and now I can go back into my generator/index.js, and I'm going to use another method on API to actually render that template. So I'm going to do API.render and then pass it the path to my templates, which is just in the templates folder. I don't need to pass the subpaths because that's how Vue CLI knows where to place this file inside. Because I told it to render what's inside templates, it's going to say, okay, I'll render source/main.js. And actually here, I do need to put a ./, and that should be good. You can actually see this render method in the documentation. And here's the render method. You can see it's used to render template files into the virtual files tree object and basically generate new files for your project. Now you'll notice here it says options for EJS. That's because you can write EJS syntax inside your template to make it dynamic, pass in variables, stuff like that. Now EJS is a very popular tool in the JavaScript world to be able to put logic inside of your templates. And it's usually used inside of templates that are going to be rendered to the DOM. But Vue CLI plugins can use it for any kind of file, whether it's JavaScript or Vue or anything else. When your templates are parsed, it's going to look for this EJS syntax. And we are going to see an example of that in just a second. Okay, so let's run this plugin again. Let's invoke it one more time and see what happens. I'm just going to hit up, Vue invoke it again, proceed, yes. This doesn't do anything yet, I'm just going to hit enter. Okay, it says successfully invoked generator for plugin. And you can see in our test Vuetensils repo, the main.js file was replaced because it has the new code in here. Now it ran a little bit faster this time because this dependency was already installed. And I'm going to leave it that way for now. I don't need to reinstall it every time. So now I want to set up Vuetensils in this main.js config. If I look in the Vuetensils docs, I can see the getting started says that I can globally register components, or I can just locally register them in the file where I need them. Just for the sake of this demo, I'm going to globally install them. So let me copy the example that he has here, go back to my plugin code in main.js, and add the component here. Now I'll take what he has in the template here, go ahead and copy it, and now I'm going to create another file here called app.vue. Let me just paste that in here for a second. And I'm actually going to copy the app.vue code as well. And now I will paste it in here. And I'm going to add this V alert that I took to the top of the page. That's good. And because Vuetensils doesn't come with styles, I'm also going to borrow his styles, which he has some sample styles here that target the class that he gives you. I'll scroll to the bottom and paste it in here. Okay, now let's see if this properly overwrites the app.vue file as well. Now remember that in my generator, I'm rendering everything inside of templates. So now it's going to include both of these files. So back in my terminal, I'm going to clear this, and now I can do Vue invoke, say yes again, and it was successful. So let me check out my code for the repo, which is here, and you can see it changed the file. There are my styles, and here is the V alert that it added. Of course, the main.js is still updated to register that V alert. I guess here one thing I should do, just for linting purposes, is change these double quotes to single quotes, because I just copied it from the library and it doesn't match up with the rest of the repo. So I'm going to change that. So let's make this a little bit more customized now. And maybe we don't want to assume that they want a global import in this file. We can actually ask them whether they want a global import or a local import in this app.js file. So let's first change the prompts file. This isn't really important for the library, so I'm going to get rid of it and create a new object. Now the name will be, I suppose we can call it preset, and the message will be a question: where do you want to use your Vuetensils components? It's okay wording. Now the type of this will be a list, because they'll be able to select from a list of choices. So I can pass in those choices here as objects with a name, which I'll call global, and the value will also be global. And then my second choice will be local, and the value will be local. Basically, the name is what the person going through the CLI options will see, and the value is what I'm going to receive in my code as a variable that I can manipulate. Here I can also set a default. So I'm going to say that the default will be global. So now if I invoke my plugin, I will see this list of two choices, but I'm not doing anything with it yet. So I can get access to whatever value the user enters inside of my generator file, my index.js. So I need to add the options here as the second parameter, which Vue CLI gives me. So now I have access to the options, and basically what I can do is say const and then the name of the prompt, which is preset. So const preset, and pull that out of options. And I already know that preset will either be equal to global or local. So now I can actually pass in this preset option to my template so I can have access to it. So I'll pass it in as an object, and I'm going to use a shorthand, so preset is preset basically. So I'll have access to the preset by the name preset inside of my templates here. So let me go into my template. Let's go in the main.js. And for right now, I'm just going to add a line of code here with that variable that I passed in. So I'll console.log as I normally would, but I'm going to add some EJS variable syntax here. So I'm going to say preset. And this should render the variable when it writes this file to the repo. So now that I've changed a couple things, the prompt, this file with the variable, and in passing the preset in, let me go ahead and invoke this plugin and make sure everything's still running. Clear this, invoke the plugin again, yes. And now you can see I have this option where I can go up and down if I want global or local. I'm going to say global. It was successful again. And now if I go into my repo, I can see it says preset global in the place where I put that preset variable. So it rendered the variable as its actual value. So what I can do with that is basically set up an if statement in my templates. So in my main.js file, I'm going to put an if statement here. I'm just giving some space so it's easier to see. And I'll say if, so I'm kind of putting everything I want to parse as logic when I render this template inside of these kind of tags. So I'm going to say if preset equals global, then, and I'm going to close this tag here, % angle bracket. My editor isn't fond of this syntax, but that's okay. Now I'm going to come down here and say angle bracket %_ close the if statement, and now I will close my EJS. Okay, so now if the user chooses global, we'll set up Vuetensils for them here. But if they choose local, we want to set it up in the app.vue file. So I'm going to copy this over here, and now I'll leave this alone, that's fine. But now instead of registering this as vue.component, I'm going to get rid of that and add in another if statement here inside of this export default. By the way, you can do if-else statements here, so I could do else and then kind of do the same thing, or else if or whatever, but I just need an if there. So I'm going to add this same thing just inside of export default right here. And here I'm going to register it as a component, but only if they chose local. And I can add the v alert component. Of course, I need to update this to local, and this should be local as well. All right, let's see if this works. Let me invoke the plugin again. Do I want my Vuetensils component? Let me say local this time. Okay, interesting. I must have made a mistake. Duplicate key components. And that is true. I do have components here. So I guess this is a good case for if else. Here I would have hello world in any case. And then let me just quickly add an else here, saying if the preset is not local, then I'll render this regular hello world. And let me copy this. Okay, so now if it's local, it will hit this if statement. If not, it should register just the hello world component. I'll try invoking this again. Let's say local, and it was successful. So now you can see the main.js file doesn't have any of those imports. And if I go to app.vue, I can see it has imported the valert and also registered it as a component. And of course, I was already showing the valert there. I just want to show you one other way of invoking a local Vue CLI plugin that you're creating. You can actually use the Vue UI. So if I type in Vue UI, it runs the server for the GUI, and now I can open it up on port 8000 in my browser, and I'll see this dashboard screen. Now I'm in a different application right now, so I need to get into the Vue app where I want to install my plugin. So let me go to the project manager and import the app from my local machine. It's in my Vue CLI plugins folder and in my test Vuetensils folder. So I can just go down here and click import this folder. And now you can see here that I'm inside of my test Vuetensils project. Now if I want to install a local plugin, I just go to plugins, and you can see I've already installed it because I've been working in it in this video. But if I wanted to add a local plugin, all I have to do is click add plugin. And instead of searching for one from Vue CLI, I can actually go to the bottom and click on Browse Local Plugin and find my local plugin from my machine, so Vue CLI plugins, and I can install Vue CLI plugin Vuetensils, add local plugin, and I could finish installation. If I wanted to refresh the plugin here, I could click on refresh and update the plugin. I found this works well as far as installing it, but it can be a little wonky because for some reason it still looks at the npm.js registry to try to find the plugin even though it's pointing to a local file. So it really works either way. You can use it from the Vue UI or invoke it locally. I think it's a bit easier to use from the terminal, but maybe that's just my preference. Let me know what you think in the comments. So that wraps up this basic tutorial. I encourage you to check out the Vue CLI documentation. And if you're a Vue lover like me and you see a project that might benefit from a Vue CLI plugin, you can definitely let me know, or try to turn it into a plugin yourself as kind of a fun project. Note that the Vue CLI team specifically gave this message to not overuse Vue CLI plugins. Basically, if you just want to install a dependency, you can just npm install it. Then when do you want to create a Vue CLI plugin? It's basically to do more than just install a dependency, such as what we did today, setting up templates or other configuration for a user. If you want to see some more advanced plugin examples, then you should definitely check out this plugin that I've been scaffolding and contributing to called Vue CLI plugin just serializer Vue TJW. I'll link it in the description below, as well as some other plugins that I think are good, like this Vuetify Vue CLI plugin and the Element UI plugin, as well as the Vue CLI Apollo plugin, which is fairly advanced, but can give you a lot of ideas if you're trying to create a plugin for yourself. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned a lot about Vue CLI and how to create plugins for it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Also join me in Discord if you would like to chat about coding and related topics throughout the week. The link is in the description below. Thanks so much for watching and have a great week.